Test, test. Test, test. Alright. Hey people, Wall here with Wallcraft. It's a pleasure to be back for lesson number 9. This is the going to be the community Q&A stream. It's been a requested one. A lot of people have various different topics that haven't been covered yet, so I figured I'd give people chances to field the questions. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, simply type them in the YouTube chat preferably. Or you could use the VMaNGOS classroom chat in my Discord to ask any questions, and they will be answered during this stream. Preferably YouTube, though, just for convenience. Hello, Phalanx. Phalanx says he is here. Yeah, let me take a look over the Discord here. What about quest items? And let me post this up in some other Discords here and get some more people in. We're going to wait a couple minutes for people to get here. Alrighty. We got a few people tuned in right now. I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll start going over some topics here and get some questions answered. Let me just post this up in a few more Discords in case people got questions. Upright says, we love Wallcraft poggies. Hello, hello. Mr. Nobody asks, hey Wall, while we wait, do you want to give a quick overview of how things stand on Wallcraft at the moment? What has been done, what is missing, when is launched, something like that? No pressure. Oh yeah, I'll definitely go over that in just a moment. Once I finish posting all these video links. Fraxinus asks, no plug in the mod Discord? Right, I am getting to that. One moment. Good call, though. Let's see. Upright asks, will ogres have customization options, at least skin colors or so? Yes, that is a plan. Ogres will feature various skin tones that are available. There's like 8 in total, I believe. There's a few older ones that are deprecated that you don't see in game. I'll try and resurface. But for the most part, ogres will either feature 1 head or 2 heads. Or they'll feature various skin tones as well. The only issue being 2-headed ogres don't have the ability to wear helmets properly. It can be done, but it would take just a lot of work. You would have to redo basically every helmet in the game. So, that's a lot of work. Chances are if I do release 2-headed ogres, you simply just wouldn't You would be able to wear helms, but they wouldn't appear on your character. They would just never visually appear. Gamer says, lurking, good luck with stream, brother. Hey, much appreciated, dude. Mr. Nobody says, nice, thanks. Crazy Din says, students ready for class. And Ever Jr. says, greetings, Wall, greetings, everyone. Greetings, greetings. Alright, so we've sufficiently shilled. I think we've got a couple people watching right now, so I think this month we're just going to do Q&A. A lot of people have various questions, so I'm going to give people time to type any questions that they might have in chat. Questions can be involving anything, really, whether it's VMaNGOS, whether it's Wallcraft, whether it's WoW in general. We're just going to be answering questions today, so nothing really planned or decided other than that. I just wanted to take opportunity to answer questions for people. Upright says, sounds great. I'm really considering that grind. I'm only interested in one-headed ones anyway. The Ogre grind will definitely take some time. The Ogre grind will definitely have a lot of nuances to it, because the Ogre quest line, it will basically be a condensed leveling process where you'll receive basically a level per quest. There'll be about, generally about 50 quests within the total chain, or parts of the rep grind, plus a bit of grinding to supplement it. But you'll be accelerated 1 through 60 while playing an Ogre, and there's definitely going to be a lot of PvP options for the third faction races. Denzo says, will spawn rates for nodes be increased? Will there be new spawn points? Spawn rates for nodes are not going to be increased. Essentially, they are custom tuned depending on the node and depending on the zone. If I have to change them just to support different various levels of population, I will. But there's no plans for any dynamic respawns or anything like that. Everything's on a set spawn timer with pooled spawn groups. Whether or not I will be randomizing and moving nodes, very likely. I'll probably shift them around. I don't want to break add-ons too much, but at the same time I don't want people to know where everything is. So there is a chance that I will move things around slightly. It all depends, really. When I add war mode resources, they will obviously occupy large parts of the area that they're in, but they'll be confined to basically, I should say, not occupy large parts of the area, but they'll be confined to a large section of the zone. So when those spawns are added, I may readjust other spawns. Fraxinus says, why not just give one head on the Ogre the helmet? Yeah, that would be funny if only one of them wore the helmet. It would be possible. If you were to do that, you could easily, at the same time, just make two helmets. The problem is the helmet's geosets for they don't exist, essentially, for two heads. So if you try and equip a helmet on the two-headed Ogre, the helmet sits directly in between the heads, because that's where it assumes the helmet goes on the model. For Ogres, you actually just use the Orc helmet loadout. It works just fine. You can do a custom geoset, but there's really no point. Kazgrim, I believe, gave me a ton of the fixed Goblin and Ogre geoset items, which is super cool. It saves a lot of effort there, and makes them function, basically. Unreal Craft says, what do you think about Blizzard Classic Plus rumors with Metzen at the helm? I think Blizzard will release some sort of Classic Plus, but I think it's going to be an absolute letdown. It's going to be pretty disappointing. I can't imagine what they'd revolutionize with the game, and I certainly couldn't imagine them going through the old databases and resurfacing stuff like I have. If anything, they would kind of just make it like a generic Wrath of the Lich King experience. As to whether or not they're going to develop new content for Classic, I couldn't imagine it, because Classic just simply isn't profitable. If they would do a Classic Plus, the only way Blizzard will do that is if they can monetize it, so there will be WoW token. There will be monetization, there's going to be some sort of cash shop, you just know it. Like, they have no incentive to release a product like that. It just doesn't profit them when they could be making money elsewhere. Something like a Hearthstone generates, like, per day more than all of WoW Classic does. And Hearthstone's pretty dead comparatively. people still pay money for it. I don't know. I think really the biggest draw for WoW is the Chinese market and botting, and whether or not the Chinese really care about Classic Plus is the deciding factor. I think they will. I think they will do some sort of Classic Plus, though. I can just imagine them trying to cash in on it, but it will have cash shop monetization. Brett says, yeah, I don't think Blizzard can deliver even with mods, and I think it'll be low effort, possibly feature terrible choices like a new level cap or class. Yeah, I don't know what they would do, frankly, with a Classic Plus. I couldn't imagine them putting in the effort to make it what people want. Like that's the thing too. Even with like something like Wallcraft, I simply don't have enough man hours to put in everything that people want. So Blizzard would have the resources, but do they have the vision? Even with Chris Mattson at the helm, I don't think so. I don't think that they would put in the effort for things like player housing. Why would they? And even if they did, it would be bad implementation, honestly. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what they would do, but frankly, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, I heard Blizzard's releasing Classic Plus. That's, like, kind of not relevant to me. It just doesn't feel like anything that impacts me or that I even care about. The only thing I could imagine is that in 6 months after it releases, I look at it on the YouTube videos and I just see content ripped directly from Wallcraft and Blizzard's just stealing my shit. That would be hilarious. You never know. Yeah, I'm looking through Discord just to make sure that I don't have any questions popping up. We're probably just going to do a very light Q&A session today. I'm probably going to try and last until about 4 Eastern time, so another hour and 45 minutes. We'll just try and field as many questions as I come through. As to whether or not there's going to be a ton, we'll figure it out, but we'll probably take a break every half an hour for 5 minutes so people can stay refreshed and just try and see what we got coming our way. I'll talk about a few things too, updates for Wallcraft. Yeah, so I'll make that the next topic here. Somebody had asked earlier, they said, can you give a quick overview on how things stand on Wallcraft at the moment? What has been done? What is missing? When is the launch? So essentially, where we're at, Wallcraft has been in development for almost 3 years now. We've a ton of work done on it. So all the classes are done. Itemization's like 95% done. There's a few things I want to touch up, but that's nothing super major. I think I might have to retool T1 sets a little bit. I got to go through all the stats and overview later raid tier items, but everything up before raids is done. All the itemization's done. In terms of things that are, let's go through the question here one by one. Overview of how things stand on Wallcraft. So at this point in time, I'm trying to do endurance and stress tests. Not really per se a stress test, but I want to make sure that there's longevity and runtime. I want to make sure that the server can essentially stay on for a month straight with no problems, no crashes, no issues, which has been successful. The server currently has not experienced a crash in maybe 3 months, aside from the day that we tested the offline player system. And the last time it crashed was because of GM command usage, which was fixed. So basically I want to make sure that stability and uptime are peak, and I want to make sure that everything is working smoothly for the player's leveling experience, which there's been no complaints. Some miscellaneous things like a few quest items having low drop rates and stuff need to be tuned up, but in terms of any fluid gameplay, or any gameplay that's not fluid, I should say, everything's been playing smoothly. Everything's been playing very nice. So I wanted to give players some time to test everything and just kind of casually level, and people log on, people log off, whatever. As for things that are still left to do, I need to finish up Alpha Ironforge. That's the big one. The big one on the list is I need to finish Alpha Ironforge with the elevators. The old Ironforge and the Gnome areas have elevators that need to be added, and those are pretty tough to do. It's going to take some time to do them. The doors for the elevators as well, they need to be connected on a timer. So I'd like to make sure that they're done perfectly, which means I'm going to need to go take a look at Alpha WoW project and spend some time on there to make sure all the doors are all lined up. I have the database for all the game objects for the doors and the elevators. I have the database information for it, but I don't have the client information, so I'm going to have to review that. But I'm pretty sure the elevators are actually still somewhere in the client. They're just disabled for the vanilla client, so I'll have to take a look for that. But Alpha Ironforge needs the tram. The tram is the big one. Chances are the tram won't even be finished by the beta launch. What I'll likely have to do is I really have to study how the tram is timed as a transport and kind of wing it, because of the way that it works. It'll work, but basically there's going to be a loading zone during the tram ride. That's just kind of how it's going to kind of have to be. So that's something to look at. For now, I'll probably just add a teleport NPC. That'll suffice. It's not really a big deal. Players just won't be riding the tram, really. So not a huge deal there. I'll just keep the teleport NPC, but I want to finish that up, preferably before the launch or sometime during the beta. I have to redo some of the stuff with Paladin class that I wanted to before the launch. And I want to touch up some of the I think some of the auras I need to take a look at. Blade of Rivendare, the health regen isn't working right now, so I got to take a look into that. A few mechanics need to be touched up, really, but nothing major in terms of that. The class mechanics are pretty much all in place. I want to make sure that everything is ready, basically, to go play from level 1 through Naxxramas. Any new content, any additional content comes after. That'll be developed during the beta phase. Chances are the server will launch with TBC Kara, which is Kara 20. It'll be a 20-man raid in Wallcraft, and then perhaps Alpha Kara and Karazhan Crypts. If anything, those are going to be like the 3 things that I work on for new content before the launch, but it's rather low priority simply because those things aren't even going to be cleared by people for a very long time, so really no rush on that. And player housing. I have a lot of player houses to make. I've got maybe like 3 or 4 people that signed up on Patreon. I haven't been rushing the houses because I did have a few people who signed up. I made them houses and then they canceled right away. Obviously, the Patreon is supposed to be, it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. If you sign up for the Patreon before the launch for a house, I'll make the house and you get to keep the house even if you were to unsubscribe. But we had 2 people basically try and rip me off by signing up and then canceling payment after I'd made the houses. So yeah, I'm just, I want to make sure that I'm putting forth my time properly. I'm going to do the houses, the next batch, all together at once. I'll have about 10 to make. I'm going to talk to all the players and get everything all situated for them. Figure out exactly where they want their houses, how they want it designed. I have a few people who have been messaging me various screenshots of where they want in game, so if you have a house that is yet to be built, send me a screenshot of where you want it and any type of game objects that you want surrounding it, so I'll know to put it on the list. That'll help me out greatly. Otherwise, I just kind of play it by ear for what looks good for the area. I usually reuse assets from the nearby area so it blends in. That's player housing. That's another focus that I'm going to be putting forth by the end of the year. I want to get all the Patreons caught up for the housing. And for the racial housing areas, I want to start development for more. I'm going to do Tauren next. And then after that, it will probably be Undead. The Undead, I'm thinking about making like some sort of catacombs, but it's probably going to be a reused WMO. So I'll kind of have to see what works and what doesn't. And maybe create a new one. We'll figure it out. Let me get through some of these questions. Mr. Nobody asked, plans for Grim Batol. Grim Batol area will feature a world boss up by the big elite dragon area. At the very top, there's room for a world boss outside of Grim Batol. In terms of a Grim Batol raid, there's no WMOs for Classic like that. The problem is, locations that are buildings or inside of a structure, they're basically giant objects that you can make in Blender, but they're very time-consuming, very complicated to make. It takes like a whole team to make like an entire raid, or somebody who's putting in a lot, you know, months and months of work. So in terms of designing a new Grim Batol raid dungeon, no, I have no plans for that. There will be a world boss outside of Grim Batol, and perhaps someday I'll backport a Grim Batol raid, but there was never a vanilla map for it, so I'd rather stick with the unused vanilla maps for the time being, and once I run out of them, then I'll consider moving on to new stuff. The only exception being the Alpha Karazhan, because Alpha Karazhan is itself a WMO, so I had to make a custom map which uses the older version of Deadwind Pass, essentially. Unrealcraft says, by the way, are you going to commission people for custom content like WMO, M2 textures, etc., or are you doing everything by yourself? I have some people help me. Ever Jr. is one of them, who's made some WMOs and stuff like that. A few other people like Kazgrim and Reynolds, and a lot of people in the community will contribute to the project, but in terms of creating new WMOs or M2s or anything like that, that's not really the goal of the project. The project more aims to restore unfinished content and content that was scrapped and unfinished by Blizzard. So, if anything, I would commission somebody to do things like fixing models, like adding animation kits to models and stuff. You know, there are people that have the skill set for that I would happily pay money to if they were willing to negotiate a good price for that. But at the same time, that's low priority. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I could spend $200 to get somebody to attach all the animation kits properly to a Scourge model that'll be a playable race, but that means creating an entire new what have you with that content when there's like 30,000 models and only 10,000 of them are actually used. So there's just so much stuff that exists in the game files that's basically unused that I could use. There's not really a point in buying new stuff or commissioning new stuff. If anything, I would commission stuff that needs to be fixed that is, you know, kind of core to the project, but other than that, not really. I try and do everything myself to begin with, so... but yeah, especially down the road. I would say like 2 years down the road when I'm looking to add more and more content, if there's, you know, a lot of good artists and good contributors, I'd be more than willing to look into that. Ever Jr. asks, is there an add-on that loads exact drop chance from database on private server? Numbers... I scroll down. Numbers are not baked. No, you would have to query the database, and the database, I don't think, sends that information in any type of packet. You would have to basically query the database on that, and I don't know. I don't know anything about that. I don't make add-ons, so... you could simply publish the drop chances for stuff. You know, I could just post the drop chances and the loot templates. And so if somebody knows how to work with SQL, you can make, you know, some sort of PHP front-end app on a website that queries the database. Well, not if you query the database, but has a copy of the database that you just search through. You know, show like item display info and stuff like that. Kind of like Classic DB. If you were to make like something like Classic DB, yeah, I could host on a website. Tuna says hello. Reynolds says howdy howdy. Hello and howdy. Denzo says, will hunters be getting focus? Will pets be getting any more abilities? Spiders getting web, for example. I had considered giving hunters focus, but I decided against it for now. They had mana in vanilla, so I'd rather just keep it with the mana system. The hunter no longer really has any issues with mana between Viper Sting and their efficiency talent, which allows full regen, and the fact that they benefit from Spirit, you know, Spirit being a pretty good stat on them now. So there's not too much of a concern there. Upright says, Wallcraft is currently playable, right? I haven't hopped in yet. Yeah, yes, the alpha test server has been online for over a year, or almost a year, I should say, and is available for gameplay 24/7. Just go to wallcraft.org to register, and then set realm list to wallcraft.org. Reynolds Cahoon says, I got Wallcraft running on my Steam Deck, trying to hone in on the good control scheme for it. Yeah, I'd imagine it's pretty tough to play on a Steam Deck. I've seen the videos and it looks really cool, but I couldn't imagine the controls are really conducive for an MMO, or at least WoW. I mean, you could definitely make an MMO for it, but I don't know. The point and click feature might work pretty well with it. I just couldn't imagine trying to use a mouse. Unreal Craft says, what are you going to do if the case with Turtle WoW happens to Wallcraft? Tons of Chinese players flooding the English-speaking server. Would you opening Asia-only servers? Wallcraft has a Discord registration requirement for playing, so I don't suspect getting that many Chinese players. If there was, for some reason, a ton of Chinese players trying to play Wallcraft, then yeah, I would just open up a Chinese server and geo-lock each server. Mr. Nobody says, I prefer drop chances and tables stay secret. I want the mystery of not knowing what drops and not the checklist playstyle from Modern WoW. I feel the same way, which is why I haven't published any of the information yet. I'd rather just keep everything fresh and new. Some people don't like secrets. Some people, they want the same old, but you're playing a custom version of vanilla, so you know, obviously there's going to be new stuff and a lot of new secrets to discover, so. Ola says, how customizable is the WoW CCL? The WoW client. Would I be able to implement an FPS WoW private server? The WoW client is not open source. It is a precompiled binary executable, so you can decompile or you can basically like reverse engineer some parts of it, but it's closed source, so nobody knows how it truly works. You're not able to put it this way, you couldn't turn the vanilla WoW client into a first-person shooter very easily. I'm sure it's possible, but it would require so much magic that you're better off just creating a new client. You would be better off creating just a client from scratch at that point than trying to do that. The take aim ability on Wallcraft kind of simulates an FPS where you zoom in. There is functionality for obviously like zooming in, but in terms of like projectiles aiming where you're placing your cursor, no, that would take a... You would basically be better off writing a client from the ground up. It technically would be possible though. I would say technically, but just not easy. Yeah, I mean, Wallcraft has a custom patch. I have a patch 3. That just adds information to the client. That doesn't change like how the client looks or runs or anything like that. The client can be edited to some degree, but in terms of like what's actually running with the client, it's closed source. There's no source code for it, or it wasn't released by Blizzard ever. Unfortunately, it would be cool if it was leaked at some point, but it never was. I mean, there's definitely things that you could do. You technically could make like a shooter style MMO, but it's a lot of duct tape magic kinda for when you're modifying an old client. Yeah, that's what I mean there. Reynolds says it best. Somebody implemented FPS using missiles that fire in the direction of the player facing, but it's janky and calculating collisions is costly. Wallcraft has the Frozen Orb spell. The Frozen Orb spell would essentially work the same way as like an FPS shooter mechanic, because it spawns basically a creature unit that travels in a straight direction from where you're facing. And you could make it float, so it basically doesn't follow any Z bounding. It won't have any gravity, essentially. So it would fly like a bullet. Collision, though, is a pain in the ass to calculate. You could obviously destroy the object on collision with any terrain or M2s or anything like that, but like in terms of could you zoom in and shoot somebody in the head? No, there's no types of like calculation really for that. Missing from the market is third-person shooter Fortnite style MMO, but with capacity for 10k players on the same server like Nostalrius. Wallcraft's gonna be kind of like that, but not a first-person shooter. Wallcraft's war mode with the base building and stuff like that, those kind of play like that. Just not a first-person shooter. Ever Junior asks, by the way, what's the most interesting secret you found on Vanilla Alpha Client last time? Like the quest line and sunken temple you talked in previous videos? Oh, the most interesting secret. That's a tough one. The most interesting, nothing feels astounding anymore once you just start looking through the game files and you see like how much unused content. But the most interesting secret would be Marvel told me about a crypt in Badlands that I never knew existed. It's near the graveyard respawn, kind of near the center of Badlands, and it's an unused quest location crypt with a skeleton king sitting on the throne with a sword next to him, and it's a nod to Conan the Barbarian. But I had never known it existed. Nobody else I talked to knew it existed. So, the quest item is disabled and you can't click on it typically, but I added a click option for it, so little secret there for Wallcraft. If you know the crypt that I'm talking about, you can go in there and the quest isn't currently implemented yet, but I did enable it to be an interactable object, so pay attention for that one. Try and snag that one when you're in Badlands during beta. Reynolds says, scroll up here. Reynolds says, any details on what the bases will actually look like when they're implemented? Will they be upgradable or a single structure? Will there be variants? The bases will kind of function like Eastern Plaguelands towers. You know how like when you capture them, suddenly like a bunch of ghost defenders spawn and they're friendly to you but hostile to everyone else on the other faction? It will be kind of like that. There'll be like a capturable point, and in terms of building up the base, there will be objects within the base to defend it that you automatically get control over. I would love to have a base building system, but it's a very complex venture to try and implement for what is essentially low reward. I mean, it would be cool to have like carpentry skill or like a woodworking skill or something where you like build doors and stuff like that, but and have them be like consumable, so when you take over a base, you construct it up. But in terms of whether or not that would be like, does this make the game that much better? No, it would be cool, but in terms of just the amount of labor and work to implement something like that, I would rather just have it where you capture the base and all the structures that are part of the base become yours, essentially. So like all the NPCs surrounding it, any locking doors you would have the ability to open if you control the base, etc. Yeah, their placement would be like predetermined within each zone. I had originally intended for war mode to be like players could place their base anywhere, but the logistics of that says that there's just going to be nothing but problems, so it kind of has to be some predetermined zone. So each zone, like the coolest place in the zone, you think like EPL will be like Tyr's Hand, Western Plaguelands will be like the Scarlet Place up in the north, I can't remember what it's called, Hearth Glen. All the zones, all the coolest spots and the coolest locations. Any zone that is specifically controlled by a faction will have no bases. Essentially, it's only contested zones that you can take over, and you essentially function like a third faction at that point then. Jeff asks, can I play as body type 2? If you're an ogre, yes, you can play as body type 2. There's body type 1 and body type 2 for ogres, and that just really determines the amount of heads you have. But you can play two-headed ogre, yeah. That is body type 2. Ever Junior asks, I suggest to make this video the second part as a presentation where you show interesting things like secrets and vanilla/alpha client, like very unused models or so. Yeah, I should definitely put together a video showing a lot of the unused stuff, because I've discovered a lot over the years. There's tons of out-of-bounds locations, off-the-map locations, stuff like that are kind of secret that you'd never discover. Caverns of Time, the original Caverns of Time like entrances are absolutely wild. I would say the Black Morass original entrance over the like floating bridge over the abyss, and like the kind of like futuristic high fantasy background for it. Yeah, that's a really cool one. That one's like absolutely wild. Mr. Nobody asks, what do you recommend as a server, Windows or Linux? Do you know how it compares in performance? They're generally the same. They're basically the same. You'll get essentially equal results. Obviously, if you're like a Linux wizard and you know everything, the ins and out of Linux, you're better off using Linux. If not, use Windows. There's essentially no difference. It's just that it boils down to personal preference. If I were anybody, I would probably use, personally I would use Windows 7, but I know it's not really secure anymore. But yeah, if you're a Linux wizard, go with Linux. If not, use Windows. Reynolds asks, another request would be a list of the currently implemented / planned player houses. Love to create a list of the available zones, but I don't know what's currently taken. Yeah, I'll definitely publish a list so people can kind of see the full breakdown of what zones are occupied. Some zones do have 2 players existing in them because they requested to basically have their house together, or to share a house, so that's, you know, no problem there. I think 8 zones in total right now are taken. And I'd have to go through the list, but like Tanarus, Eastern Plaguelands, South Shore, Stranglethorn, Elwyn, Thousand Needles, those are going to be taken. Tirisfal, and a couple more. I can't remember off the top of my head. Red Ridge is taken. People are saying in Discord CS2 shouldn't have been released. It's not complete yet. Gamer says, yeah, it's kind of bare bones. Still way better than CSGO on launch. Yeah, I kind of anticipated it. Valve kind of wanted to get it out there because they're probably going to spend, obviously, it's going to be like Dota where they spend the next 15 years developing it. Constantly adding it. And it's always going to be in beta. So, at least the early sample of it is reviewing pretty well. People are enjoying it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of features bleeding into it over time, but Unrealcraft asks, have you ever played Albion Online? Sounds a lot like the server you want to make PvP-wise. No, I've watched Sam Medina play some Albion, but, no. I'm North American, you're thinking of the wrong hemisphere, buddy. Oh no, that's, Tibia. I'm thinking Tibia. I don't know who plays Albion. I'm guessing probably Eastern Euro. Popular. I'm a RuneScape and World of Warcraft MMO guy. I've never really played any other MMOs. I played one other MMO once. It was called, I think, 2 Moons or something like that. It's kind of like a scuffed EverQuest. I played some of the original EverQuest as well. If I could say, I would call Kingdom of Loathing an MMO technically. Kingdom of Loathing is one of the all-time greatest games ever made. It's an HTML-based kind of like text image adventure game, but it's so friggin' expansive and massive. It's one of those games that would take you like a decade to master. The game is just insanely good. It's so funny too. Kingdom of Loathing is the funniest game ever. Reynolds Cahoon says, can you explain the survival profession? Seems bare bones on the Wallcraft at the moment, but curious what the overarching idea is. Yes, survival will be finished and fully implemented before the beta release. Survival will allow you to create survival gear for weather situations, to combat exhaustion, hunger, thirst, tents, which allow you to safely log out in the game world, stuff like that. So survival's a secondary profession that basically helps you survive in the world, create fires, torches, etc. There will be a few other implementations for survival as well, but that's basically the gist of it. It's basically a secondary profession that will help you not have a bad time out in the game world. So things like cold weather, if you're adventuring in winter spring, having survival for cold weather gear is going to be a huge benefit if you're not a dwarf or an undead. Things like that, of that nature. So yeah, I didn't get around to fully implementing survival because a lot of the systems aren't in place yet either. Exhaustion, thirst, hunger, stuff like that, they will be added hopefully before the beta. That'll be another thing that I'm working on, is the world systems. A big setback for me was the offline player system. It's consumed so much time. I spent probably like 3 weeks working on it, and it's just still not ready for implementation yet, so I gotta basically reverse all of it and then just keep moving on, which is really discouraging for how much time I spent working on it. Mr. Nobody asks, would you allow anyone to run a copy of Wallcraft in another continent? Thanks for answering all these questions, man. You're a real hero. Yes, you can run Wallcraft in another continent. The caveat is, to play on Wallcraft, you need to register an account, and the account registration system will be tied to Discord. Some countries like China ban Discord, so not many people in China have Discord, so it's kind of a barrier to entry there. But as long as you can register on Discord, it will allow you to register an account, and that helps me prevent botting and cheaters, because it's very difficult to repeatedly make a ton of Discord accounts to register for Wallcraft. So that'll help reduce a lot of the problems that servers typically experience. Giovanni says, when the beta server will be up, Wall? Last time you said something about late this year. Yes, I would expect at the very end of the year, probably late December. That's my anticipation, is to have it launch before January 1st. So the alpha is currently playing. You can go play the alpha up until then. If you reach level 60 in Death's Trial, you'll receive your mount, obviously. I believe there's somebody who just hit 60 in Death's Trial. I actually have to go give them their mount. Let me pull that up and see. Somebody was named Death's Trial. I gotta give them their mount. I think he's 60. Yeah, he did hit 60. I don't know if he's on Discord. I don't know what his name would be. Yeah, I got somebody I got Lovely. Alright. We're going to go for a cigarette break now. We'll be back to field some questions after. So stay tuned, gamers. Afterwards, we're hopefully going to talk about some various VMaNGOS related questions. Don't know where we had to leave off from last week. I can't remember specifically, or last month I should say, specifically, but we'll try and review some of the stuff. Oh, it was talent trees that we were doing. So, we're going to do classroom resumes in 5 minutes. Throw on some music. And we're going to hit a smoke break. Be back in 5. And we are back from the break here, people. Let's take a look through the chat, see what we missed. Ivor Jr. asks, what kind of feedback do you need from players / testers on current stage? Perhaps something specific to test? No, nothing in particular. Frankly, I'm just letting people enjoy the game, and nothing specific to test, really. Everything's been tested pretty extensively at this point, so I would say if anything there were to be tested would be raids, but we would need 40 people for that, so that'll be something for the beta. And hopefully we see some people progress through and enter BWL. If I could see people enter BWL and maybe clear a boss, see how some of the stuff is tested. We've tested it together in like 20-man raids to generally get a feel, and it feels pretty good, so. But doing a full 40-man would definitely be the right idea. Reynolds asks, is the rep gains also 1x on low-level quests like standard quest XP? Yes, you get the same amount. There's no reduction in reputation. So that'll definitely help out. A lot of people complain about vanilla being, if you didn't do the quest at the right time, you would miss out on the rep rewards. The rep is actually a configurable option depending on the progress of the server. So, Genzo asks, do you expect PvP to be balanced with undead being undead and Torrent as beast? Yes. Simply because, although they're immune to some CCs, they're vulnerable to others. Undead, obviously they can be feared by paladins and shackled by priests, but they're immune to sap, polymorph, seduce, repentance, things like that. Same with Taurens. So, there's a bit of a variety in terms of what CC works, depending on what faction you're playing, but the balance is generally there. Some classes will benefit more, some classes will benefit less. Night Elf Wisp form is formless, so it can't be CC'd by any mob-specific CCs, or creature-type specific CCs, I should say. Judy asks, how does hit rating work when, for example, level 20 characters melee attacks level 40 in VMaNGOS? Players are calculated for hit rating based on player level. In default VMaNGOS, your weapon skill is considered maxed, while in PvP, and they are calculated at the same level. In terms of that, but you have a lot of different penalties that are associated with that as well. Your spells miss a ton in vanilla normally against higher level opponents. On Wallcraft, PvP is always calculated for hit rating and miss chance and stuff like that, at the players being at the exact same level for both melee and spells. So if you're level 20, you won't always get resisted or misses when trying to cast a spell against a higher level. Unrealcraft, what do you mean about fixing animation kits, like rigging broken models to proper skeleton with full animation kit? Yeah, stuff like a Murloc doesn't have any animation for jumping. You know, stuff like that. So if you wanted to have a playable Murloc, you would need all of the, proper stuff to make them work. Animation kits are the big one. As long as they have the base animation kits, such as jumping, swimming, strafing, stuff like that, then they're pretty much usable. Some things have a full range of animation kits, but are missing a lot of other model data, like sound and geosets, stuff like that. Basically, the most completed models, most playable models are Ogre and Goblin. And High Elf. High Elf is missing a lot of animation kits, and they don't have geosets though, so you would have to either backport the TBC Blood Elves into High Elves, or do something else of that variety. Or fix the base models, which is something that I'm referencing. If I were to do commission work, it would be something for like vanilla High Elf models to be fixed with the right animation kits and geosets. Fraxinus says, will you scale the raids if the player count isn't there? No. Vanilla is static. People have asked this before. I will never have a raid become easier because you couldn't get the numbers. That's the player's problem. I don't foresee it being an issue where, we don't have enough people to raid Molten Core on the server. It's something like that. No, I think there's going to be plenty enough people to do raids, and I will never ever change or scale difficulty or loot rewards based on the number of players. Because that's one of the magic aspects of MMO design that was lost after vanilla, or after Wrath of the Lich King specifically, is that the boss drops X, Y, and Z, and there's an X, Y, and Z chance for those things to drop, and they're this difficult. You fight them. It requires this many people to clear this raid, generally, and those numbers are unchanging. Later expansions scale different things and have random rewards that are based off of, like, individual player roles, and those are bad MMO designs. Nobody likes them in the long run, despite them maybe being more convenient in the short term. So no, I would never do anything like that. Just because it's not vanilla, and well, in particular, it's not vanilla. But other than that, I don't think it's good design. Reynolds Cahoon says, "Are there any zones or places available in Wallcraft that aren't available on the typical vanilla realm?" Caverns of Time, yes. Caverns of Time is available. Obviously, you can go to Black Morass or Durnhold. Highjaw obviously is available. You can walk into Highjaw. Onyxia is there, so if you want to go raid on Onyxia, you got to go to Highjaw. The Alpha Karazhan map, TBC Karazhan map. Dalaran was actually implemented at one point, but I removed it because there's a lot of work still to be done. Dalaran likely will be accessible post-Nax Ramus. It'll be a city floating above South Shore, or above Alterac, above the Dalaran crater. And only available to people who have completed Nax Ramus. But that's tenuous, whether or not I can get the city to display properly, because it's a Wrath of the Lich King creation, so there's some issues with it. Ever Jr. asks, do you think skilled players like it if the hit rating penalty between levels is removed? I mean, I think it's always respectful if you kill players 7 levels higher than you. Do you think skill players will like it if you... Yeah. Do players like it? Yeah, they definitely do. It's a real feels bad when you're level 30 and you're getting ganked by a 60 and your spells just can't hit because they're higher level. Like, that's cheap. There's no real reason for that. People don't really care for it. They don't like it. The same principle applies for dungeons in Wallcraft. When you do a dungeon, the mobs are all calculated based on your player level, unless they're a skull mob, at which point they're calculated 3 levels higher than you. So, like, if you're going through Nomer, and the beginning mobs are gray level, but the end mobs are red, normally Nomer is like one of those dungeons where it's like a 10 level range, so you go in there at level 25, the entrance is really, really easy, and the end is really, really hard. While Wallcraft, the consistency of the dungeons is better. The dungeon overall is difficult, and it gets difficult as you progress deeper and deeper, but that doesn't mean by the time that you get to the end that you simply can't hit and all your stuff is getting resisted, because that's just, like, that's a feels bad. That doesn't feel good to get to the end of the dungeon and you can't kill the last 3 packs because your spells just resist every time. So everything being calculated on your level actually makes it tougher, though, in many cases, because if you're over-leveling mobs, they will still have the same hit chance. If you're a level 60 and you're going to AoE clear stockades, it's not going to work that well on Wallcraft. It will work, obviously, because you can kill them, you can damage them quickly enough, but they deal a lot more damage, because those level 25 guys in stockades, they treat you like a level 25 when they hit you for formulas. Fraxinus asks, for examples, even if you only ever had a max of 10 level 60s online at any given time. I just think you're severely underestimating the anticipated player count. If you're asking, like, a year after the launch, there's only 10 level 60s online, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that there's more people online right now, in fact. I think there's, like, 10 people online, so... I don't foresee a situation where there's not enough players on the server to raid outside of, like, the first week of the server. If you're talking like 3 months down the line and there's not 40 people to fill a Molten Core raid, I don't anticipate that happening. If that were the case, then instead of retuning things to scale off player level, which is like an insane amount of work, I'd be better off getting a job at McDonald's and then buying Facebook advertisements to just get more players playing the project. You know, something like that. Yeah, I don't foresee that being a necessity, really. Thim says hello. Hello, Thims. Ronald says, what will be the biggest difference between the beta and the alpha? The alpha had a lot more active developments, nightly pushes for updates or weekly updates throughout the first half, all the way up for the first 6 months. It was like every other day was an update. The beta will have updates posted usually every 2 to 3 months instead, so less frequent updates and much more consistency for the server. It aims to have 100% uptime with no interruptions, and the updates will just essentially be retained to weekly honor maintenance, so the Tuesday restart. Virginia says, I accept that hit rating penalty in PvE mostly justified, but how about PvP? Do PvP really needs it? Yeah, it doesn't make any difference when you're playing PvP. Like, if you're level 60 in a battleground fighting other level 60 players, it doesn't make any difference. The gameplay is the exact same. If you're a level 60 fighting a level 40 player, you're still gonna kick the piss out of them. You're twice the health and twice the mana, twice the armor. So like you're still gonna slaughter them, but it just means that the level 60, their attacks aren't 90% misses, which is pointless. That doesn't make any sense from a gameplay perspective anyways. That was essentially just a mechanic to restrict players. If you think about it, that mechanic where I'm a level 40 and I can't physically hit a level 60, not because they're some crazy guy, they're just a standard, regular quest NPC, a humanoid quest NPC, some orc in Blasted Lands or whatever. The reason you couldn't hit them was an artificial time gating constraint. They basically didn't want a bunch of level 40s forming a raid and going to farm Blasted Lands. So in the open world in PvE, you still have the same penalties. Nothing changes. It's only for instances in dungeons and for PvP. And there's no difference on that. That just means that the level 40 in Stranglethorn Vale that you're trying to kill, his polymorph is probably going to land instead of resisting 12 times in a row. Like, that's really the only difference. It makes it tougher to gank lower level players. That's really the only effect you'll ever notice from it. But it doesn't make them, anywhere on your level. A level 40 player is going to have, 2,000 health, whereas a level 60 is going to have 5,000. So, and you can just one-shot them, with your Pyroblast or whatever. Mr. Nobody says, player housing. What if a player never logs in anymore? When does the house get removed? Essentially, the house retains in your possession for as long as you are actively on the Patreon. There are early supporters. Anybody who is supporting the project during the alpha and the beta will essentially get to keep their property, but anything after the server launch will be more strictly regulated. And very, very likely I will not even do the Patreon after the server launches. Anybody who has supported the project with the Patreon will be grandfathered in, and then after that point, there's probably only going to be like 20 zones left. I'll probably auction them off for the open world housing, where I'll just do like a monthly auction, and it'll be a silent auction. Whoever bids the most gets the house. And that's probably how I'll fund the project, because dealing with a monthly subscription for it is counterintuitive. Because then you constantly have to monitor it, whatnot. If the house is auctioned off and it sits dormant, that's the player's prerogative. There's other forms of open world housing. There's, racial housing and stuff that I can spend more time managing than a bunch of private houses that are more so just trophies that you purchase. In terms of helping support the project, because they don't offer anything distinct. So I don't even really have an incentive to do anything with them. If a player wants to just have one in the game and never ever use it, that's their prerogative. It's not like it's doing anything special. So. Mr. Nobody says, I love that a group of level 40s now has a chance against a level 60. Great change. Yeah, that's basically what it is. It allows you to not just get absolutely rolled by a level 60 due to the fact that they are 20 levels higher and there's an artificial mechanic that prevents you from hitting them. Like, the fight should always boil down to your actual stats, not... Because that's the thing. Even if you're a level 40 and you have 30% hit rating, which is obviously unachievable, It doesn't help fighting against a level 60 player because that 30 hit rating calculation is so diminished. So it's like your character's stats don't really matter at that point. Your player level is artificially the most important thing. A level 59 with better stats than a level 60. Level 50 with more health, more armor, more mana, more attack power, more crit, more hit, more everything than a level 60 will still, in normal vanilla, get stomped by the 60 because he won't be able to hit, which is just kind of dumb. It should just scale off the player's actual stats, their abilities, their skill, which the game already does, so there's really no point for the double layer of mechanic. You know, a level 60 fighting 5 level 40s, the level 40s stand a chance at that point, because they can damage the level 60, they can stun him, they can CC him, but the level 60 could also just, you know, possibly just one-shot people, because he has enough damage at that point, depending on his gear. Especially something like a rogue could easily sap one, ambush, blind, and then it could kill 5 of them pretty easily at once, if he was smart. I do anticipate, as with most vanilla custom servers, a lot of people play custom vanilla for paladin fixes. Paladin just being the worst class, essentially, in default vanilla. I wouldn't even call them the worst, but in terms of just gameplay, the most lackluster. So a lot of people will always roll Shaman and Paladin, so I anticipate that. So with the Undead rework, I think that kind of synergizes it with it well. I wanted to make Paladins powerful against something, but also the Horde have something that's very strong overall. Undead probably being one of the most well-rounded for existing in open-world environments. Because you don't need to eat, you don't need to sleep, you don't die from cold, you don't suffer from the cold. You are immune to a lot of different CCs, though you are vulnerable to other ones. So it's a very overall good class to play if your interest is just running around the world fighting people. And doing raids and stuff too, but a lot of quality of life that prevents you from having to focus on anything else besides just getting to the next person to kill. Obviously, you know, all the races are very strong. Trolls very strong in their regards because they're berserking scales for a lot of bonus haste, essentially. It's like up to 50%. Taurens, obviously, they get planes running, which is a huge movement speed boost, up to 90% at max level. You know, at level 40, it's, what, 60? So they have some nice advantages there. The Orc, obviously, you have the stun resist and the disorient resist. It's 10% and 10%. A little bit nerfed, but you have the dual effects that they originally had. The Blood Fury, though, it's like a free Skull of Impending Doom that just supercharges you. 10 seconds of just being unCCable, uncontrollable, you know, wreaking havoc. Troll is definitely the sleeper one. Troll has a lot of good advantages in terms of their sustain and their regen. I would say the biggest one, though, is the Berserking buff is even stronger on Wallcraft, so that's a very nice one. And the bonuses that they get are very nice. The health regen, particularly, is a lot stronger. Denzo asks, any plans for Druids to be able to use Cheetah form and Calf form, increase movement speed talent indoors? I always found it dumb that they couldn't. The Cheetah... No, you can't use Cheetah indoors, or the movement speed off Cat, or Wisp form. Movement speed indoors is restricted for the purposes of balance, essentially. Now, obviously, hunters can use Aspect of the Pact or Aspect of the Cheetah, but the way that mobs work, their movement speed, if you could use Cheetah or the increased Cat speed form indoors, you would have some issues in terms of balance, because Druids would be able to kite things. You can use Entangling Roots indoors, however. I did at one point have the Cat form movement speed available indoors, but unfortunately the way that the system works, it created some issues with the Bear form also having movement speed. and there was no way to essentially stop that. So, what was a bit of an issue in terms of balancing. The biggest concern for that is PvP. So only Hunters and Paladins movement speed talent. Well, Paladins movement speed talent applies towards their seal, which they cast on other people, so they don't really need the talent for the movement speed. Hunters get the movement speed from their pack, which applies to everybody that they choose, so essentially everybody gets to benefit from that movement speed. So it's not like it's restricting it to a specific class there. But yeah, in terms of using Cheetah indoors, I mean, I could enable Cheetah indoors, but the problem again is balance for PvP. The reason you can't use movement speed like that indoors is largely as well for PvP. Particularly Warsong Gulch. So, I mean, it's just there's no point to it. The only point and the only argument for having it indoors would be for Druids wanting to cheese raid mechanics, basically. Where that 60% movement speed would actually be able to break a raid mechanic. And a big reason why aspect of the pack doesn't is because of the days mechanic as well. But yeah, PvP balance is very delicate in that regard for what is allowed indoors. What if you make Cheetah travel form, get days like aspect to the Cheetah? Yeah, but like, what's the purpose? What's... I can understand that if you're a Druid player, you say, well, I want this because it's just convenient. Yeah, it works in Night Elf Inns because they're technically not indoors. The Night Elf Inns, they're fully outdoor WMO assets. Which was conducive for Night Elf players, obviously. Same with a lot of Tauren structures. Tauren structures oftentimes are considered outdoors. They're like open pavilion tents, stuff like that. You know, like, if I was a Druid player, I would want it. If I wasn't a Druid player, I wouldn't want it. And that's kind of like a defining aspect. Who's this really benefiting? What's the purpose of having movement speed indoors on a Druid besides breaking dungeon and raid mechanics? Because how much time do you actually spend indoors besides dungeons and raids or PvP? And yeah, there's like, oh, I have this quest, I have to go in the cave, and it would be convenient if I could run out, but that's a thing for vanilla that I don't plan on changing, because it's part of vanilla and it's there for a reason. It's there for a reason because otherwise you could break the game. You know, being able to imagine if you could run 60% on Thaddeus as a Druid and you just built up aggro and then just kited him around and didn't take any damage because you're a Cheetah and you have enough aggro to, you know, hold the boss. Stuff like that, you know, it's kind of an issue. Seven Skies says, when are you planning on releasing the server, Wall? The alpha is currently available. The alpha has been open for 10 months now, so you can go play the alpha for the meanwhile, but the beta will release before the beginning of the new year. So before January 1st, sometime at the end of this year. Likely the last week of December, that's when the beta launches. The beta will go all the way up until the end of the following year. So the beta will last approximately 1 year. It'll be a full 1 through 60 progressive server. And the beta is essentially the same as Fresh, but not all of the content is in-game yet. It's a full playthrough though, 1 through 60. And anybody who reaches 60 in the beta will be rewarded with a competitor's tabard. As well, obviously there's like full raids that you can do. You can run everything. It's basically a Fresh server, you know, year-long Fresh server. Semi-Silent asks, can Druids use pole arms? Not at the moment, but I had considered it. Druids do not favor sharp weapons, though. That's kind of like a class fantasy aspect, is that Druids prefer blunt weapons. Shamans have access to axes, because that's kind of like an ancestral primitive thing, but druids, in terms of that, don't really prefer sharp weapons, with the exception of being daggers. I have considered polearms, though, and that is a possibility. I may give them access to polearms. It is a possibility. I have considered that one, and I even considered giving them access to dual-wield fists, but unfortunately that doesn't really work. There's just issues with it, so perhaps. Denzo asks, will alpha characters be wiped before the beta? Death Trial characters will transfer over to the beta. They may not be released immediately. They might be delayed by a month, but Death Trial characters on the alpha will carry over because they are confined to the same systems as a normal progressive run. Normal characters will be deleted because a lot of normal characters obviously have like GM items and stuff like that, so you don't want that in a normal fresh, do you? And people running around with 5 Thunder Furies. Death's Trial characters, though, are restricted, obviously, in the way that they're played. They can't trade, they can't access the shop, so those will transfer over. Yeah, Earthshaker with Blade Storm is a real slapper. That thing... oh, man. Personally, I prefer the, I prefer axes with Blade Storm, just for the extra cleave damage, but in PvP, absolutely the Earthshaker. Blade Storm, Earthshaker. The first warrior with Earthshaker in PvP is going to absolutely slap everyone. Because while you're Blade Storming, you're immune to spells, and anyone who's trying to get in for melee damage is just going to absolutely get their ass clapped. Your only fear really at that point will be hunters, but if you're standing inside in the corner, Blade Storming in like Alterac Valley, you're good to go. Seven Sky says, are you still working on Death Knights? Death Knights will be far away. They won't be... Death Knights won't be available immediately on launch, very likely. They're a low priority at this point, but yes, they are in the works. I would anticipate Death Knights to be available sometime in the next 2 years. Benzo asks, will the Unstoppable Force from AV rep do a knockback originally? Yes, it has the original knockback effect. Pushes people back. That weapon with Blade Storm is going to be incredible. And Alterac Valley rewards, all Battlegrounds, are available on release. So, you're able to do Battlegrounds. You can do Alterac Valley in the first week. You know, once you hit level 50, you can go do Alterac Valley. I might even make a lower level bracket for Alterac Valley. Because the way that... this is the thing. Like I said, the way that PvP works in Wallcraft means that players are calculated at the same... for the same formulas at the same combat level. Which means I could include Alterac Valley to be level 1 through 60. And then anybody could just queue up into Alterac Valley. And because it's instanced, even the mobs, the NPCs, you're not going to have the level restrictions. Like, a level 56 Alterac Valley Ram can be killed by a level 20 player. Obviously, the level 20 player isn't going to be doing a whole lot of damage, and is going to be taking a lot of damage comparatively. But, yeah, like, if you had a level 45 in your Alterac Valley queue, you could go kill NPCs with them and stuff, and they can go do the quests, travel around in groups. I had considered as well making Alterac Valley kind of open world, where it would be a battleground, but essentially you would be in an open world environment with unlimited players, and it would just be running all the time. Once it was won or lost, it would just reset. There would be no battleground queue, you would just zone in. That would be like the original Alterac Valley intention. Mr. Nobi says, would you consider adding a time limit to rogue stealth to avoid players staying indefinitely stealth, ganking low levels in capital cities, ports? No, that wouldn't be vanilla, timer on stealth. In terms of high-level players ganking lobbies, there's... that's kind of the element of World of Warcraft, is World PvP. This is a World PvP server, so if there's a high level ganking you should probably call for help. But the thing is, if you're a Death's Trial character, you're a PvE account, you don't have to worry about that. If you're a War Mode character, you should probably be worried about it, but hopefully you're in a war mode guild with other people that will just come kick his ass. The only people that will really be ganking low-level players will be normal characters, normal PvP characters, and I just don't foresee it being much of an issue. I think people will be spending way too much time doing other stuff for that to really be a problem. But in relation to that, there will be a bounty hunter system in Wallcraft. So if somebody's ganking low-level players, put out a bounty on them. You can reward money for people who kill them. When you kill a player in World PvP in Wallcraft, they drop an ear that you can essentially claim and turn it in for the bounty hunter reward. So yeah, if somebody's out in the open world being a nuisance, you can hire somebody to go kill them through the bounty hunter system. Reynolds Coon says, would be dope to have brackets even if they're wider than others at launch, so you'd get low-level AVs going during the leveling process. Yes, AV, like I said, likely will be expanded to be level, more essentially various levels. It wouldn't be various brackets. There wouldn't be like a 30, a 30 through 39 AV. If anything, it would just be one giant open world raid that anybody beyond level maybe like 20 or 30 could enter. That would be a consideration. If anything, though, I'm not too concerned about AV because, frankly, I don't think a lot of level 44 players have a whole lot of interest in doing any AVs. Everything is going to be higher level than them and out-leveling them, so it just depends on really what the players want there. But in terms of getting queues to pop, I could definitely open it up for any level players to just get in there and get their queues popped. My Ogre will stomp on low levels all day. Mark my words. Hell yeah. That's what an Ogre should do. Ogre should be stomping people. Mr. Dobie says, I love PvP. I just don't like the people staying 12 hours stealth at a port or something. Bounty system is cool. Yeah. With the bounty system, I wouldn't be too concerned with players like that. Most people who are going to be really interested in PvP are going to be doing war mode anyways, and I just don't really foresee them spending a whole lot of time ganking people considering they lose durability on death. And when their gear breaks, it permanently breaks. So war mode players have a different set of challenges of dying in the open world that they have to be worried about. You're talking to the guy who got Exalted Rep with all factions in PvP back in vanilla at 52. Yeah. Yeah, see, a lot of people would be interested in it. It just depends on who's actually going to be using it. So none of those systems are slated for the launch of the beta. They'll likely be retuned during the beta. So that's something to be determined, and we'll come back to on that. I'm going to take another 5-minute smoke break here. I'm going to grab a drink, refresh, and then we're going to go on for about another 30 minutes. We'll answer questions, keep going. A lot of the questions today have been about Wallcraft. Haven't really touched on VMaNGOS, but that's fine. Didn't really have anything particular to talk about this month, so I figured I'd just field whatever questions came my way. If you do have any VMaNGOS questions, do not hesitate to ask. We'll try and address them in the upcoming segment. So 5 minutes, we'll be back after this break here. Alright, we are back. And rounding up the last part of the segment here, we will field another 30 minutes worth of questions. Reynolds Cahoon says, I know you're primarily a VMaNGOS developer, but what you know about 3.3.5 dev? What is the biggest difference / challenge embedding between the two? I don't know anything about 3.3.5, I'll tell you that. I've never used Arc, I've never used Trinity, never used VMaNGOS. I only know VMaNGOS. I know some things, obviously, but in terms of, you know, modifying a 3.3.5 client, never done it. I can't say that. Technically, for Nogget, I have modified it a bit, but that's just to make it more like vanilla, so it's better compatible with my version of Nogget. Vanilla client has more restrictions from early development where they didn't get things quite right, and they developed it later on to be better in Wrath of the Lich King. There's a lot of systems that don't send essentially enough information to the client that the client would like to have or that a developer would like to use. So Wrath of the Lich King client, generally easier to work with. There's more utility with it. However, the vanilla client has things like LUA macros, which Wrath of the Lich King client doesn't. People can complain about vanilla macros, but once you've used them and gotten used to them, you realize really how strong they are. Yeah, honestly, there's not a ton of difference. Some of the formats are different, like the way the M2s store their skins, stuff like that. But that's mostly model details. And in terms of the databases and the tables, they're generally the same. There's not a whole lot of difference. The clients are relatively the same. In fact, if you look through the database, the DBCs, I should say, you'll see that a lot of the stuff is basically restructured in Wrath of the Lich King client, but nothing really major, at least as far as I can tell. So there's not a whole lot of difference in working with them. Obviously, Wrath is the preferred one that people work with just because there's more tools for you to use. The tools are better developed, and they're typically developed for Wrath of the Lich King, so just a better compatibility for tools. But once you're used to vanilla tools and the more limited nature of the vanilla tools, or limited selection, I should even say, there's not really a whole lot of difference. Denzo asks, can Death Trial characters group with non-Death Trial characters? How does mob XP work? Say I'm DT character, I tag a mob, then non. Yeah, Death Trial is essentially the same. You just play it like normal. You can group up with people. You can go do dungeons and raids. You can do battlegrounds as Death Trial as well. Deaths within battlegrounds are safe deaths, so you don't have to worry about them. Dungeons and raids obviously are dangerous, but yeah, you can group with players same way as you normally would. No difference there. The only restriction, obviously, is that you can't trade with them or use the auction house. So, if you kill a dungeon boss, you know, you can roll on the loot, stuff like that. No restrictions there. And in terms of experience, XP is the same. Groups of 1 through 5 players get full experience, 100% XP rate. Any groups 6 or more that are sharing XP will have a 50% reduction in mob experience. That's all. All quests are completable in a full raid. So you could, if you formed a raid group with 5 people and you're in a raid group of 5 people, you would get 100% experience. If you were in a raid group of 7 people but only 5 were within range of experience, you would get 100% experience. If there's 6 or more that are splitting the experience, it's reduced by 50%. So you can basically, the way that I prefer to level is I'll invite somebody, I'll form a raid, and even if they leave, not in a raid anymore, but I'll try and keep raid group open and just keep filling people, keep floating people in. People can leave, people can join, they just get moved to the second group in the raid. It's really not a big deal because the mob XP isn't the big goal, it's the quest XP, so anybody that's surrounding me when I'm leveling, I'll group with. No hesitation, because there's no downside to it. You know, it's faster kill XP. The only negative is that you might have to share mob drops for quest mobs, but the kill speed is faster anyway, so it's really not any You know, there's no slowdown. It's all basically the same rates while playing in a group. Slightly faster because kill times are faster, so many quests will go faster. Kill quests and stuff like that. Beta is going to be really fun because there's going to be a lot of people playing 1 through 60 in Death's Trial. And then after the first month, I'll reintegrate the Death's Trial characters from the alpha onto the accounts. Maybe I'll even make them available right from the get-go, possibly. I don't see a downside to that. It's not really a big deal. There'd just be more people in the game to do stuff with, but I think most people would just opt to level again with their characters. And there's not a whole lot of people who hit 60 on Death's Trial, maybe like 10 altogether during the alpha, so it's really just not a concern. Here, I'll boot up my Death's Trial character. I just got level 30. I switched over from prot to arms. I had leveled all the way basically to 30 as prot. And then I switched over to arms because at level 30 you can buy the white vendor pole arm and it's very strong. It's 3.8 speed pole arm from the vendor. And with the level 30, I've got the pole arm talents. So Mortal Strike and Polearm talent's really big. I'm gonna go hit some quests. I remember I was in Menethil. I know I'm cheating on Death's Trial. I teleport around GM commands. Well, while playing, I take flight paths. I do everything normally, but for the video, I'm just gonna teleport. And what quest was I doing? I just completed one last time here. Now the Cursed Crew. Go turn this in. Yeah, the polearm talent, super nice. You get the polearm talent, you have 10 skill with polearm bonus and 10% chance to crit. Plus I have Slam and Mortal Strike, so I gotta go all the way up the coast to Captain Hallandor with the curse. Denzo asks, can Death's Trial characters... Oh, I already answered that one. And we're going to put on Chibi Face here, and we're just going to fly right up to it. Just give a little bit of sight and sample. You can see my Death's Trial character has my skills pretty high. Not maxed out, obviously, but pretty high at the point. I got from like 25 to 30 without doing much profession grinding. I just haven't had a whole lot of time to focus on that. However, I'm just going to go hit some mobs here and see how we fare. My character is pretty well geared. I've crafted all the gear to like max level around level 20. So you can see I've got a bunch of green stuff, and I've even got some SFK blues from the SFK run that we did. I actually do have the sword. I would love to go to the sword spec after, but in another 3 levels, probably respec to swords, maybe even axes. Let's see, we slap pretty well though. These mobs. More rage. Hamstring, man. Unfortunately, the way that I'm streaming, I'm doing monitor capture. I should be doing game capture. So FPS is kind of garbage right now. That's fine. Nice crit. And pole arms, that 10% crit bonus, so nice. With the pole arm skill as well, we get the 10 bonus weapon skill. 165. As a human as well, I have the pole arm ratio as a human. That's so nice, because you look, I have basically a 15 bonus with the pole arms. Very, very tough for me to miss against mobs that are my level. Mobs that are 3 levels higher than me, basically calculated as the same for hit, due to all the weapon skill. Denzo asks, I would donate more if my DT character gets moved over right away. Oh, you don't need to donate more. I'm probably considering moving them over right away, so you would be able to access them immediately. I might wait like 2 weeks to a month. Just depends what the opinion is. Because, you know, I don't want to disadvantage players who are starting out on the fresh server. I don't want them to feel like they're at a disadvantage. But at the same time, I want people who put in the effort in Death Trial and the Alpha to still have their characters. Oh, what do we get? Not a bad main hand mace, and pattern I already know. I think it's this far ship that I have to go to. I just got gouged. Bastard. See, my FPS is limited to 30. Sometimes it'll jump up back up to 60, though. Weird. Check my character's HP regen. I made sure to, once this runs out of combat now. So, what, every 2 seconds it'll tick up by, what, 50 or so? About 49.5 HP every 2 seconds. I've got a decent amount of spirit. I crafted all the strength, stamina, spirit gear, all the silver, bronze gauntlets. This stuff normally you would pass up because it doesn't have higher strength and stamina bonuses than the, what is it, the heavy iron or whatever it is. But the silvered bronze stuff now is super good for warriors because they gain that AP from stamina and spirit and strength as well. So all 3 stats are benefiting their AP, but the spirit obviously gives them the regen between pulls. So 49.5 health every 2 seconds while I'm out of combat. I barely need to eat as a warrior. Yeah, my health is just constantly ticking up. It's very, very nice. 2 guys here, so we're going to throw on a shout. We wouldn't shout on a solo mob, they die fast enough, but... Watch out for the curse, because the curse is reduce our physical damage here. And you can't bleed these guys because they are undead. Undead players are not immune to bleed effects, so you don't have to worry. Damage mechanic effects don't have immunities for players. It's basically just creature type specific, so you don't have to worry about that. Alright, gonna let my health tick up a bit, and I'll probably bandage. We're gonna have 2 mobs here. I'm just gonna pop retaliation. Just go ham on them. I absolutely dropped him down. Retaliation so nice. Crit, and we're going to need some bag space. Got the key, so we can go down. Let's heal up a bit. We can go down and then open this box here. Should open the clams. Look for them pearls for jewel crafting. I don't know why I deleted the other one. That's fine though. Should just start disenchanting most of the stuff as well. Got a miss. I'll pop my perception for that 100% hit chance. Make sure we're hitting these guys. Oh. Just got overpower on him. Go for another slam. Mortal Strike, Overpower, and to execute. You need to. Kajul Tad says, so is Holy Magic going to work on undead players? Yes. Exorcism, Holy Wrath, Turn Undead, Shackle Undead, that all works on undead. Anything that targets undead works on them. And even gear that gives you bonus damage against undead or attack power versus undead also works on them. Conversely, though, they are immune to effects that affect things that aren't undead. So like Polymorph, Seduce, Repentance, Sap. Those don't affect undead creatures, so they're immune to them. Denzo asks, will exotic pets have any new abilities? Can you give an example of one exotic pet? Yes, there is the Core Hound, which some players have currently on the Alpha server. Just for testing purposes, not available publicly. But the Core Hound is one of them. All exotic pets will have one unique ability. There essentially will be one of each type of exotic pet. There's going to be like 10 total, maybe. They'll each have a unique ability that essentially makes them the best for their role. For example, the Core Hound will be the best AoE tanking pet. It'll have a Flame Breath attack that hits all enemies in a frontal cone and does high threat, so they're very good at AoE tanking. Very durable pets. They don't do the most damage, but they're very durable. They're pretty fast, and they're good at holding AoE aggro, so they can essentially charge on in and hold all the aggro on mobs. One of the best tank pets. Fortunately, being undead with the curse does not give me the underwater breathing. I'm going to have to worry about that. Just die. Before I drown. Bandage up again. Kajul says, what about healing undead with light magic like a holy priest? Yeah, due to the nature of the game, you are able to heal undead players with light magic. Obviously, you couldn't really stop that from working. There would be too many issues. So yeah, they get healed just fine with light. That's just one of those sacrifices you have to make for the sake of, you know, an MMO. I would like to have undead priest use more of a focus on shadow magics through priest racials for dealing damage. Immune. Where's the rage? Oh no. Okay, we're popping cooldowns now, boys. We're gonna die. I can't even hit them. They're like line of sight. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, I got GM mode. I got GM mode on. Oh no. We're gonna have to do it manually, boys. Wasn't paying attention. 3 of them. 2 of them respawned from under me. That's a death trial down, boys. Oh no. I just got my spear too. That's actually my first death on this character since I added the death counter. Rip. Well, you got to watch a historic moment of Wald dying in Death's Trial. That's sad. My bags were full. Everything respawned under me. Sad game. Well, what are you gonna do? That's how she goes sometimes, boys. That's how she goes. That healing potion didn't do crap. What the hell was that? I popped a healing potion that healed like the lowest possible. I popped shield wall. I shouldn't pop recklessness because the guy that I was hitting was like too low. I couldn't even hit him. He was hitting me. I should have passed further out though. But bad pull. My fault on that one. Not paying attention. I haven't played this character in like 2 months, so it is what it is. No, that's fine. Kajul says I shouldn't have distracted you. You didn't distract me. That was my own fault. I wasn't paying attention. I was just pulling. I pulled one mob and then the 2 from below respawned. Or came out from behind the wall, something like that. It is what it is. I don't really care. Put it this way, I plan on deleting all my characters because they're full of GM items. There's no purpose on having them when the beta launches anyways. So I'll make a new death trial for fun during the beta, level 1 through 60 altogether. The full launch doesn't have a whole lot left. The biggest thing for the full launch is War Mode. I haven't started development on War Mode, so until War Mode is finished, the full launch can't happen. Because I won't launch until War Mode's finished. But at the same time, I don't want to wait another year for War Mode to be finished for people to be able to play the project. Because the project is fully playable at this point. You could play all the way through Naxxramas and have a blast. There's just not a ton of new content implemented for dungeons. So aside from Naxxramas, you know, there's no progression past that currently. And War Mode is a big facet of Wallcraft, so can't really launch it until then. Reynolds says, it hurts most when your bags are full and it happens. Yeah, my bags were completely packed full of stuff, but at the same time, I don't even remember what I was carrying. Because it's been like 2 months since I've logged on this character. So, yeah, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Honestly, I wanted to basically re-gear anyways. I have to level my professions up further. They're kind of low at the point. Since I'm level 30, I can now get up to... I would need, what, 35, yeah, actually, first, before being able to max them. But I want to get them to 225 anyways and craft all the mithril stuff. Let's see what we got. A lot of the low-level stuff for crafting obviously got buffed. So, at this point, I could actually make the... I can't make Barbaric because that's a Horde recipe. I have no way of obtaining it. I want to make the green iron stuff, though. That's what I was looking forward to. And I haven't crafted any iron. I'm finally high enough level to go into Duskwood and start collecting iron. And I haven't done any Duskwood questing at all, now that I think about it. I've done Menethil, and I'm level 30, so I could go do Duskwood stuff. That'll be really fun. Yeah, like, look at this weapon, Moonsteel Broadsword. Normally people would kind of overlook this, but because normally this is like a 3.2 weapon, and it's got Spirit. It's kind of shit. On Wallcraft, it's a 3.8, and that 12 Spirit for a warrior is pretty significant. 12 Spirit's going to be like 25 health regen. It's a pretty big factor for me. Yeah. And I'll be able to get the sword skill as well. So 31, I'll be able to start putting points in sword skill. That'll be a big deal. Let's see who's online right now. Oop. Yeah, it's have people on right now, messing around. Use the golden void. And most people are leveling right now. 2 on GM Island. Jewel says, oh yeah, I was playing a gnome and I saw one of the racials was a buff when you read a new book, but since there are a limited number of books in the world, that racial will become obsolete quickly. No, actually, because the books are tied to your WDB cache, so basically every time you... there's a lot of books. There's going to be a lot more, but there's also a lot of books currently. The racial will be reworked. I was just testing out some of the book systems, but the data is actually stored in the player's cache, so if you clear your cache, you can read the same book. As well, book items that you carry in your inventory, like a quest book item, those also count for activating the buff. So you could carry around a book and activate it. Chances are I'm going to rework that slightly, but I basically wanted to test to see if there was a good way to handle books within the game. Currently there isn't. I could make a system where it actually tracks it server side instead, but I really wouldn't bother. It's supposed to just work regardless. But yeah, you won't really have to worry about them running out of the selection of books to read. There's tons of books in the game too. Let's see if we can find one. There's probably one upstairs here. But I am not a gnome. shoot, I only got 2 gold. It's actually kind of scary. I wish I would have disenchanted all that stuff too before. Rip. Books, but no object. One here. Nope, Blizzard didn't have any here. Rip. There's no smart people in Menethil, I'll tell you that. Oh well. GM. Alright, we got time for a couple more questions, so before I wrap up the stream, give everybody a chance to ask anything that might be remaining. Let's see what's happening. As you can see, we have a goblin out in the wild. Goblin rogue. Mr. Blue Dragon here. Playing on his goblin rogue alt. Can't inspect, unfortunately, because it's a different faction. Mr. Nobody says, can you talk about a bit about custom items? There is a vendor on GM Island that has a pretty wide assortment of custom items. This is probably like 1/20th of the amount of new items in the game, but pretty good example. In fact, you can review some of them right now. Van Cleef's boots. These drop from Edwin Van Cleef. We have the Unholy Avenger. This is actually a new low-level epic. This drops from Scarlet Monastery, from the final boss of Cathedral. From Mograine. Very low percent. I think it's 1% drop chance. This was an original item. In fact, this was originally an Artifact GM test item, but I reworked it into obviously an epic for the raid. Or for Scarlet Monastery, I mean. It's a Runeblade style weapon. Kind of harkens back to the nefarious nature of the Scarlet Monastery. The effect on it's pretty good too. The chance on hit's pretty high. It has 3 different chances on hit for fire, frost, and disease. Very Death Knight-esque weapon. 3.0 speed, so it's pretty fast, but it's very strong in terms of the procs. Scarlet Badge, new trinket. This also drops from Scarlet Monastery, from Whitemane. This trinket is a Grail with a, I believe, 2-minute cooldown. Might actually only be a 1-minute cooldown. Just go ahead and cheat. I'll delete this character anyway soon. Test out the new Grail. Macro now. This is a nice little item. 1-minute cooldown. A little healing spell, and this spell actually scales from your healing power as well. So it's got a nice little heal. This is an original Blizzard item as well. Unreleased item. I would like to probably rework the spell animation to be holy instead of nature-based. It wouldn't be hard. Just replace the spell. But nice little trinket, 1-minute cooldown. Throw it on a healer. It's a nice little pocket heal for you. Especially, I would say, even throw it on a caster like a mage. And this gives a mage an option to heal either themselves or a friend a little bit. The Arcadic Shard is dropped from Arcadis and Oldemon, final boss. I believe it's from Arcadis. Let me add some money. This item randomly rolls with stats, same as the ring, plus it has 100 armor. It's a very nice druid piece, even later into the game. Once you, like, all the way up until, like, level 60, it's a nice druid tank piece. Mutilator, 2-handed sword. This drops from, I want to say Zul'Farrak, but I cannot remember. This is an original unreleased item. Increases damage done to the target by physical attacks by 5 for 1 minute. Stacks up to 5 times. This is a very nice item. depending on how this item works, I might actually limit it to not work on creatures above level 60, just because I don't want it to become a meta, because this sword is very strong, so putting on like on an off tank in a raid would probably be worth it. But yeah, I'd rather not have that be the case for a level 42 sword. So it's a good effect, but depending on how it plays, I might even reduce it a little bit. It's a very, very nice effect on it, though. The proc isn't super consistent, and put it this way, to build up 5 stacks probably take you a minute, so it just depends if that's even worth it. But very nice piece anyways. Demon Heart Spalders. These are a very nice piece. These are... I can't remember where they drop from. I want to say BRD from somewhere. Nice piece, though. Nice male shoulder piece. These will be a nice replacement for your Herod shoulders on your Hunter or Shaman. Go through some more of the loot here, though. Obsidian Bauble, nice offhand piece. You'll find this from another one of the endgame dungeons. Can't recall where. Increases damage and healing, plus a nice little int bonus. Very nice offhand piece, in fact. One of the better ones that you'll find. Royal Seal of Alexis. This was the original ring that was removed and replaced with the different version. The Royal Seal of Alexis item ID change. This is the original version. Widow's Clutch. Nice little chest piece. High intellect bonus, pretty decent spirit and stamina, plus it has arcane resistance. This will be a very nice piece for anybody attempting to fight Azure Ghosts. Dreadmaster Shroud, very nice headpiece with some caster bonus. This drops from, I believe, drops from Dark Master Gandling, if I recall. A very nice caster headpiece. Breastplate of the Chosen, very nice, well-rounded stats on male. Works very nicely for Shaman or Hunter, even a Warrior or a Paladin. Whoever really wants to use it can find use out of this chestplate. Rainbow stats on it. The original Onyxia Scale Cloak. This is the original version, pre-vanilla release. Or like patch 1.1, whatever, before BWL, before you could actually craft it. The original Onyxia Scale Cloak, epic item, has better stamina bonus, better fire resistance, and obviously does the Shadow Flame protection. Blade Bane Arm Guards are bind on equip world drop. I've placed them on the loot table so you'll be able to find them. No, actually, I believe these come from a boss. I can't recall exactly where I put these on the loot table. These were an original unreleased leather arm guard piece designed for either rogue or druid. Also very good for hunter, even a warrior could find use out of these. Very nice wrist piece. Orb of Fire is... This is a nice little one, and I'm not even going to tell you where it comes from. I want people to find this one, but it's a very nice offhand piece. It doesn't particularly rival the Warlock's Firestone, but it gives a similar effect to non-Warlock players, so like a Mage, a Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin in particular. A Holy Paladin that's doing DPS with a one-handed weapon for mana restore, for better, mana efficiency, will find great use out of this item. Same with the Shaman. Paladin and Shaman, really. Healers will find good use out of this item for a DPS alternative. But mages and priests as well. Warlocks in particular do find a lot of good use out of this. So, it's a trinket. The Firestone effect stacks with it. This is, I would say, premier Warlock item. If anything, I would put this on a Demonology lock. Let me go back to some of the questions here. We have Fims saying, I've been contemplating trying to make my own server thing, but I'm not sure if I want to make it in 1.12.1 due to major lack of tools, but at the same time I don't want to make it in 3.3.5. Although there is a lack of tools, it's not that significant. You get everything that you need to really get done with the tools. You just kind of have to know how to duct tape everything together. That's really the difficulty, is making things work correctly for vanilla. But there is the tool array that you'd expect from development, even though it is a little bit more limited in quality. Vincent asks, what's your favorite feature you are looking forward to? War mode. Undoubtedly war mode. War mode is going to be the defining characteristic of Wallcraft, the high-risk PvP, high-action gameplay element. And especially big guilds competing against each other. That's why there's a guild restriction on the amount of people you can have in a war mode guild, because I don't want, 500 member guilds just dominating regions. So I want, 20, 30 guilds vying for control over parts of the world. Seven Skies asks, are you planning on tinkering with itemization? I had an idea at one point of removing tier items from the loot tables, instead of adding them as cardables. A crafter would craft the tier piece for you. Tinkering with itemization. Well, everything's been re-itemized already. In terms of whether or not you would get tier pieces that you would have to craft, no, I wouldn't do that, just because that's not really vanilla. There's greatly expanded crafting recipes and different things that you can craft in Wallcraft, so there's a lot more use out of professions, especially things like tailoring and leatherworking at endgame. Smithing too, obviously. But, there's a lot of new things to craft in terms of crafting tier gear. No, not particularly. Denzo asks, will Talisman of Binding Shard be in-game? Yes. Talisman of Binding Shard and Talisman of Binding Fragment are dropped instead of the bindings of the Windseeker. The talismans are also used to create Thunder Fury, as originally intended. So you have the two talismans, you combine them into the essence, and then you basically create Thunder Fury through the quest line. And then you have the two-handed and one-handed versions of Thunder Fury, of course. Mark of Deflection, this drops from the... We're going to talk about a few more of these items. These are unimplemented items originally from the game. Almost all of these are original. A few of them have had some reworks. Mark of Deflection is one. I've added a few base stats to it to make it slightly better, because it originally only had 100 armor and 1% parry. It was kind of garbage. This ring drops from the final boss of LBRS, Wormthalak. Sky Fury Gauntlets, this is from the Shaman class quest. Originally they had the option between the helmet and the gauntlets, but then eventually obviously they get the helmet instead. The gauntlets were scrapped, so these are a nice pair of gauntlets for the Shaman. Ramaladni's Lost Sword. This drops from Twin Emperors. This drops from one of the Twin Emperors, and it's a nice alternative sword. Very good for Arms Warrior. It's got nice stats for Arms Warrior in particular. A Hunter could also get use out of this. I would definitely take this even on a Hunter, perhaps, just as a stat stick. The Strength isn't particularly useful, but the Agility and Spirit are. So a very nice piece. Wormscale Stompers drop from Oro, I believe. Nice male caster boots with a decent amount of agility, so you definitely find some use on these for Enhancement Shaman, the premier Enhancement Shaman piece, really. Another Shaman Healer Glove, really nice Shaman Healer Glove, because it's got the stats that you want, plus it's got a nice little bit of bonus agility, which you can consider as basically melee crit there, with a bit of armor and dodge. Wormhide Protector, very nice nature resistance leather headpiece that Druid was lacking for their Huhuran fight. Wormhide boots as well, DPS boots. You have the Wrist Guards of Elemental Fury and the Wrist Guards of the Grand Crusader. These pieces complement the parts that you get from Naxxramas. These drop from AQ40, along with the Bracers of Eternal Reckoning, which are some of the best wrist slot pieces that you can obtain in game. These drop from Cthulhu, along with Bracers of the Fallen Sun. These two pieces in particular, amazing, that were scrapped. Naxxramas Trash Sword Cruelty. This is a very, very impressive sword. Original unused Naxxramas two-handed weapon. Let's get back to that there. Applies a Sunder Armor effect, just like your other Sunder weapons, same debuff, so this basically replaces your Annihilators and stuff like that for later in the game. Pauldrons of the Risen Knight, a nice plate DPS piece for warriors. This drops from Naxxramas Trash. Fists of the Unrelenting. This is a, I believe, Kel'Thuzad drop, in fact. Maybe Saffron, I can't remember. So, one of the later bosses from Naxxramas. Very, very nice gloves. In fact, I would say these are the best gloves in game. These are your Titanic leggings of your hand slot. 26 strength, 26 stamina, 50% disarm resist, so you couple that with weapon chain that's disarm immunity. Then you get the crit and the hit. It's got everything you want. Life Channeling Necklace. This is probably the best healing necklace. This drops from Kel'Thuzad, just raw healing power in terms of that. Very, very nice for a paladin or a druid or shaman or priest or anybody, really. This is a miscellaneous quest item that was later, I think it later got added in WoW, but it was originally intended for vanilla, never was implemented. They added it, I think, in Cataclysm. There's a rare dwarf mob in Searing Gorge that you can kill, and you'll get this item, quest item. You go turn it in, you get the quest item. Originally it was implemented in a little bit more of a wacky random, like you search a random world object and she spawns at a very low chance, but I just went with a more straightforward, kill the rare, get the quest item, turn this in. This reduces fall damage. Very nice for rogues because they're passive, and when they couple it with their cloak that they get from the rogue class quest, which you get all 3 rewards now, so you don't have to choose between the Sunken Temple rewards. So you combine this with all the rogue stuff, and you can basically jump off of any height and take almost no fall damage. Like, you could jump from the top of AB all the way down to the mines and take no fall damage whatsoever, so you don't break your stealth with all of this. It's very nice for rogue or druid. Denzo asks, is Ashbringer in the game? Yes, Ashbringer is in the game, and Ashbringer is the best weapon. Get up real quick. These are the stats on Ashbringer. Ashbringer is the strongest weapon in vanilla, and it will be the strongest weapon in Wallcraft. Nothing will surpass it. This weapon is the premier two-handed weapon. You can only obtain it after an arduous grind. You need Corrupted Ashbringer first, and then you have to do a lot of different secret stuff, and I'm not going to reveal on how to do any of it, but I'll just put it this way, you already know. So, if you know, you know. Everybody who knows the lore of Ashbringer will know how to create this thing, if they know all the lore. Reynolds says, if you want texture reworks on any of these, let me know. Definitely, actually. There's a lot of items that alternative textures turned into sets would be some amazing additions, I'll tell you that. Going through some more of the custom items, I'll go through the entire vendor before I sign off on this video. We have the glaive assorted weapons. Glaives are, generally speaking, fast weapons. They have either a mid-speed or a faster speed for their main hand and offhand components. Most glaives have passive elemental damage assigned to them, so nature, shadow, arcane, fire. I haven't added a frost glaive. I might actually add a frost one soon. Probably, maybe even the moon glaive. One thing to note, the current crushing mechanic, weapons that have passive elemental damage are not working correctly with the crushing mechanic. You're not receiving bonus. So that'll be addressed. Don't worry about that. That's something that's on the list to fix next. So just a heads up. Doesn't really impact anybody in a raid situation because crushing isn't really particularly good in raids for the most part because your enemy will have 0 armor from all the sunders and stuff. So crushing isn't particularly mainstay. Sigil of Mardum. This drops from Kara 40, Alpha Karazhan, along with the next ones on the list, the Lightning Capacitor, Libram of Wrath, Totem of Magma, Idol of Shapeshifting. These all drop from Alpha Kara, Lothar's Badge of Authority, and Smash Red Lenses. In fact, we'll go back over them and look at them a little bit more. Sigil of Mardum is the best in slot crest that's in Wallcraft. I would say this is probably the best trinket slot crest item. It's basically a better Hand of Justice and Drakefang Talisman. It's better than Drakefang Talisman and Hand of Justice combined, basically. Lightning Capacitor is basically the Lightning Capacitor from TBC. Extremely powerful caster trinket. One that everybody knows and loves. Libram of Wrath. One of the best in slot. I would say probably the best in slot Libram for DPS Paladin or PvP. Allows your Hammer of Wrath to be instant cast. Totem of Magma increases the radius of Magma Totem's ability by 10 yards. This, of course, stacks with the other totem radius increases, so increased Totem of Magma radius pretty significantly, like 20 yards. Very, very nasty to deal with. Idol of Shapeshifting. This is your Helm of Furor effect in the Relic slot. It's your best in slot for Feral Druids and really any Druid for PvP. Bleakwood Hue, an original unreleased item. This item applies a stacking magic resistance debuff that reduces the enemy's resistance, and of course Wallcraft has the original negative spell resistance, spell vulnerability mechanics, so this axe is this axe is going to be what your off tanks are probably going to be swinging as well. Your enhancement shamans and your ret paladins are going to want this item for the raid. This is the utility weapon that you use all the way up until you get Nightfall. Basically, you replace this with Nightfall. Dark Spear as well for Survival Hunter. This was an original item that wasn't released. The Dark Spear has a chance on hit that nearby friendly units have their chance to crit increased by 4%. Recipe for Dark Spear drops from Warmaster Voon, if I recall, and Bleakwood Hue recipe drops from... I can't remember particularly, but it drops from boss at like 5% rate. Blood Talon, nice fist weapon for main hand. Very good craftable fist weapon. One of the best in slot, in fact, for craftable. Wounds the target, causing them to bleed 100 damage over 30 seconds. This, of course, is amplified by Hemorrhage, so this is a nice, very nice PvP weapon for rogues or warriors who opt for the fist build. Another Kara 40, Alpha Karazhan Trinket. This is the tank crest. This offers tons of defense bonus, 15 defense bonus, 2% parry, so very defensive trinket, but it also gives you 2% crit. So between the parry and the crit, it's going to definitely increase your damage output, because obviously parry increases your DPS, crit increases your DPS, and defense increases your parry as well. So you're looking at a very nice tank piece here, one that will hold high TPS for your tanks. And Smash Red Lenses, the healing trinket, high healing bonus, high passive spell crit, very nice healing piece. Probably the best in slot healing crest. Just very, very raw stats on it. 2% crit and all that healing bonus. Really can't go wrong. And I would even throw this on a Ret Paladin or a Prot Paladin. Particularly, I would throw this on a Ret Paladin because they gain the spell power bonus from healing. Or, even better yet, an Elemental Shaman. Elemental Shaman gains the spell power bonus from their healing and the 2% crit. A lot of DPS for them. Combine that even with the Lightning Capacitor. Formula Enchant Boots Major Speed. This is the upgrade for the Speed to Boots enchant. This is 2% higher. Normally Speed to Boots is 8%. This is a 10% bonus. So the upgrade for that, this drops from, I want to say Molten Core. I can't remember. I think it's Molten Core. Idol of the Formless. This drops from Alazin the Wild Shaper from Dire Maul West. I'm sorry, Dire Maul East. Last boss of Dire Maul East. This trinket allows a druid to retain their normal form when they shapeshift, so they'll retain their humanoid form. It's more of a PvP or a novelty thing. A lot of druid players don't like their druid forms. That's why they use the Noggin Foggers or the Savory Deviant Delights. So this idol assumes that role. It's a very nice pickup for them. Low drop chance, though, like 1%, so they'll have to farm it if they want it. Red Dragon Scale sets and the other Dragon Scale sets have been reworked and expanded to be very good. The craftable stuff, Red Dragon Scale, Green Dragon Scale, Blue Dragon Scale, and Black Dragon Scale each fill one of the 4 roles, with the red being the tank set. It's tank mail piece for Shaman. It's got high stamina, high dodge, high spirit, and fire resistance on each piece. Plus you get the 5% chance to absorb 200 damage when struck, which is a nice little absorb bonus. This is a very nice set to craft when you're going into Molten Core on a Shaman, because it's got all that dodge that you want and all that stamina that you need. Same with the Red Dragon Scale Crown, of course. You can take a look at the stats here real quick. 15 stamina, 10 spirit. And Dark Iron Girdle. Dark Iron pieces have all been reworked. All the Dark Iron craftables now each randomly roll different stats. So when you craft it, it'll have an assortment of stats. This rolled of the Eagle, 15 and 14. They can roll between 10 to 15. So if you see, I get some of the pieces here. I got 14s, I got 15s, I got 11s. So really low roll on this one. This one, Disenchanter here. This one of the Monkey, 15, 14, almost perfect. This is almost a perfect Monkey one. Very nice one on that. Tiger, this is, ooh, right here. Look at that, 14, 15, almost perfect. So this is going to be, oh, look at that. We got a perfect one. Dark Iron Girdle of the Tiger. This is going to make crafting Dark Iron very lucrative, but it's random. The pieces, obviously, they have a good base to them, but they roll between 10 to 15. So, depending on your luck, you might get a really good piece, and then you can go sell it. Especially if you get something like this Dark Iron Girdle of the Tiger, this would probably sell for like 200 gold. on the auction house very, very easily. Dark iron is very difficult to craft. There's more available dark iron ore because it is Wallcraft. There's going to be more available dark iron ore in the open world, but it's heavily contested. War mode players will have a much easier time accessing dark iron than anyone else because they'll have a special reserve if they control Searing Gorge. But again, you're war mode, so that's not really hitting the market that easily. That's just it's something you're going to want to consider here, is that you have to you have to play the market on some things if you want some of the best stuff, but crafting it is going to be very lucrative. You know, crafting some of the stuff is definitely going to be lucrative. Denzo asks, I hope it's a long quest chain like opening a queue. Ashbringer quest chain will take you all over the world and will be the absolute most difficult quest in the game, I can tell you that. Reynolds Cahoon says, can you explain the differences in hunter pet happiness and loyalty on Wallcraft? There's no fundamental difference. The only difference is that your pet... the only difference really is that Beastmaster spec has a talent called Scavenger that automatically provides your pet happiness. It essentially automatically feeds your pet, so your pet automatically gains happiness and thus automatically gains loyalty. With that talent, you never have to worry about feeding your pet. Your pet will never run away. It'll always be at max happiness. That talent is very, very nice to have because you never have to worry about your pet. Your pet will always be max. It takes a while, obviously, to build up to max, even with the talent. It'll slowly, over time, gain loyalty, but within a few hours of playing, it'll be maxed. And then it'll never decrease. Idol of the Nexus Crystal. Yeah, if you don't have a Druid, it's definitely an easy Nexus Crystal. It's very nice there. Mr. Nobody says, does having extra profession skill over max increase the chance of the item being better, like racials or items with plus profession? No, it's just randomly rolled. There's no way to essentially increase the roll chance. It's a random roll on that. Wouldn't really be possible, and that would create a really big imbalance. You basically only have certain races doing certain professions, which I don't want. Upright says, Ashbringer should require a Hand of Justice to craft at the end since it has that little hand disc in it. Yeah, I like that idea. That sun disc, though, is actually a part... The sun disc itself is what's the powerful part of the sword, just according to the lore. They found that darkened orb and then purified it and then placed that into the blade of a really big sword with a crested Lordaeron, and that's what is making it Ashbringer. The rest of the sword is just a metal, sword. Nothing special about that. Which is why the sword can be crafted. It's not the sword itself, it's the disc in it that's corrupted. That needs to be purified. But the blade itself can be saved. Let's see, I think we went through all the custom items on this vendor. There's a lot more custom items, new items, retuned items, stuff like that, but I only added like the last batch to that vendor so people could see.
Time is money.
Let's see what else. We got some stuff on here too, I believe. Got Thrash Blade for sale. Yeah, you can see like the the original one-handed Thunder Fury models, stuff like that. You can see like fist weapons. All fist weapons are either main hand or offhand, and they're fast offhand, slow main hand. They're all normalized like that. There might be a slower, like 2.0 offhand fist weapon, but I think that's the slowest it gets. Fist weapons are normalized though, so they're much better to use essentially. And that's because Rogue Ambush is able to function with fist or daggers, and it uses the offhand weapon, so you don't have to worry about swapping weapons. You just use a fist or an offhand dagger for ambushing. Teagle's Harpoon, yeah, that's normal. Fell Striker. We got some of the Druid items have armor bonus on a better spread, so you'll see more items with armor bonuses that Druids use later in the game. So you're not going to be stuck with Warden staff all game essentially. The Atiash especially is very strong in that regard. Let's see, caster weapons. Druid Atiyesh is very nice. It's offhand. Of course, we have bucklers. The buckler class weapon being usable, or buckler class item being usable by rogues and hunters as well as paladin, shamans, warriors.
Talk to me.
Let's see. Yes. The Druid Atiyesh has 300 armor bonus, and of course the 420 feral attack power, making it the overall best weapon for all forms of Druid. Whether it's feral, tank, you know, cat, boomkin, healer, anything, Druid is going to want this. And of course, you have more spell pen assortment on armor, especially tier armor for Warlock and Mage. Mage has more spell pen than Warlock, generally speaking, on their tier gear, but both of them have an array of it. Definitely helps out their DPS a bit. Kajul asks, what if there were bonuses to capturing certain terrains? Like if you have all the jungles or desert zones under your control, you get some bonus. Essentially, it'll be limited to zone by zone, and if you control the zone, you have a bonus. Or you have an array of different perks while in the zone. Some zones will provide special buffs to you. Some zones, when you control them, will provide, you know, resources. They'll have guards. They'll have special base facets and stuff like that, like alchemy tables, things like that. Some zones will have zone-wide buffs for anybody that's in your war mode guild that controls the zone, obviously, if you control it. So there's definitely a wide array of it all. Upright says, yeah, I bought the comic after getting CA on Classic. Hated the comic, though. Ashbringer sure. But I love the weapon. Yeah, the Ashbringer comic was kind of whack. The original lore and storyline of it was way better, which is what Wallcraft's going to follow. Obviously, like, the Ashbringer cliffhanger in vanilla is that you take it to Scarlet Monastery and then you talk to Fairbanks, and Fairbanks says, well, it's corrupted, but there's somebody who can make it anew, and it's the other son of the Mograine, and he's in Outland. Well, obviously there's no Outland until TBC, and then there were some spoilers and Easter eggs, but there was nothing there regarding it, and then they retconned it all after that to where Ashbringer was like, totally retconned. But of course on Wallcraft, you can go to Outlands. Which is, somebody was asking, you know, what zones can you go to? I did neglect to mention Outlands, but that's because most players won't be able to access it. You need to kill Kha'Zix to access it. And I decided I probably will rework the Kha'Zix encounter, depending on it. I do want him to, you know, go through the portal himself, but regardless. Kill Kha'Zix, and then now that Kha'Zix's dead, let's see what he dropped. Garbage. Very nice belt. This Boomkin belt, very nice belt. Cape, amazing. This is the last piece usually people get for the Eskander bonus. The cape itself is very good. Eye of Shadow and Lordly Arm Guards, not bad. Once Kha'Zix is dead, you go through the portal and you're in the Outlands. And of course, this is where you will encounter the lost son of Mograine, who will begin the process of helping you create Ashbringer. Fly around a little bit here. Let's see. The original Alpha Outlands. Original Alpha Hellfire Peninsula with the original Honor Hold and the original Horde Pit, whatever they call it, can't remember. You have the original Pools of Agonar. Original skeleton of Agonar laying there dead. And this little Blizzard model that they left here of some dummy guy that kind of looks like me now that I'm dead. Rip. Flying around. Yeah, it needs a lot of retexturing, a lot of reworking. You know, there's tons of work left to do on this place before it's really usable, but Alpha Outlands and Wallcraft will be a world PvP zone. It will have some world PvP quest objectives, but primarily it's going to be chock full of resources. When Kazakh is killed, you will have a certain amount of time where you can access the Outlands, and it's a world PvP zone. It's dangerous. War mode players experiencing death here will lose their stuff, so very dangerous zone to go contest. I don't know specifically what I'm going to do with it, but that's the general idea. It's just going to be a big open world PvP zone with a lot of different resources to go collect rare stuff. But basically, when you kill Kazakh, the Dark Portal will be open for a limited amount of time per that week, and then once his corpse despawns, it closes up again. So you only have a limited time per week to actually access the portal and farm resources in here. So controlling the entrance to the portal is going to be important to keep other guilds out. And obviously inside here it's just going to be a big free-for-all PvP zone. The beta launch, Bokaseka95 asks, how many years left, brother, until you will launch it? The alpha is currently playable. You can go play the alpha right now if you'd like, but the beta launches later this year, before the beginning of the new year. So you'll have a full year of the beta, which is essentially a fresh server, 1 through 60 progression. And then at the end of the following year, 2024, is when the full launch will happen. Lots of work left, though, so a bit more time on that. Well, I think we're, let's see. There we are. The Ashara Crater. This will be the upcoming battleground that I plan on finishing. Don't know if it'll be finished before the fresh launch. I'll try and work on it sometime in the beta, but it's going to require a lot of scripting to actually get it to where I want it. The Ashara Crater battleground will be a MOBA battleground. It's a very nice place, though. A lot of cool places to go fight people in. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this month's lesson. I'm glad we were able to do the Q&A, answer some questions here. If there's anything else that you got to ask, feel free to post it in the Discord. I'll answer it in the Discord after. For anybody watching the video, of course, on YouTube, my name is Wall with Wallcraft, and that will conclude this month's. Next month's will, of course, be the end of the month, and next month's, well, for the month of August, of course, might possibly be the last one until the beta launches. It just depends on how much time I have. So, months, this is basically going to be last month of summer here, and then work gets ramped back up in November. So, we'll see how it goes. We'll play it by ear. Either way, it was a pleasure, and feel free to leave a comment on the video. I always answer questions on the comments if you have anything to ask after. Much appreciated, and thank you everybody for tuning in. We do have one last question here. Vincent says, take care, man. Thank you for tuning in, man. Mr. Nobody says, last question, will you teach custom spells? One of the previous lessons actually covered the custom spells. Go through the YouTube channel and you should be able to find it. I believe it was lesson 3 or 4. Covered a lot of creating the custom spells, so that information should be available to you. But yeah, that's all for today. It was a pleasure. Thank you for everybody tuning in, and until next time, stay classy.